Dacia has completely disrupted the budget car market. It was bought out by Renault in 1999, and since then it has produced some really fantastic models that have sold brilliantly in the UK and in mainland Europe. Now, the Duster might be its most famous model. You can barely move for them in mainland Europe, particularly sort of around the provincial parts, that kind of thing. It's a great car. This is the Dacia Sandero. It is the company's sort of small family car, super mini thing, and this is actually its new second generation model. And it's very interesting because Dacia has gone, you could almost say, a bit more upmarket. This is a completely modern platform. It's a very modern 1 litre turbocharged engine, and you can get all sorts of very modern equipment on it, so it doesn't look or actually feel that budget. And yet you can get one of these for under £8,000 brand new, which is kind of mad. This here is a comfort spec model, and that is a top spec car, and that means that you get lots of stuff, but it does cost £11,500. And if you're considering one of these, you are probably also considering one of these. Now, this is the new generation Clio. It was introduced in 2019. So the question is, do you buy new, but a bit more budget, or do you buy nearly new, but perhaps a bit posher? So our friends from Hendy Renault in Poole have lent us this car. We're going to put them together and find out which one is the best bet for your cash. Before we find out, don't forget to subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of our videos. Now, for the sort of price range that you can get a new Dacia Sandero for, you are looking at either a previous generation Clio, which went off sale in early 2019, or a current Clio like this one, which was introduced later that same year. For the price of our top spec Sandero Comfort, you can have the new Clio like this one, which actually shares the same platform and even has a slightly more powerful 98 brake horsepower variant of the Sandero's 1 litre turbocharged 3-cylinder petrol engine. However, to get that newer model of the Clio, you're looking at a fairly basic spec, hence the iconic trim here. Still, both of these cars get auto lights and wipers, keyless entry, parking sensors and cruise control. The Dacia goes one step further with a reversing camera too. This is the new generation of Clio. And as such, it benefits from a really decent interior. It's one of the things that Renault really did work on with this current generation. So you get really decent materials, all feels very solid. You get, all the switches quite nicely damped, and you get this big touchscreen as standard, even on this iconic spec car, which is fairly basic. The touchscreen in the Clio is all right at best. It is a bit disappointing the way it reflects light quite badly, and the graphics are a way off what you'll get in something like a Polo, and actually even the Sandero has slightly better graphics. However, you do get nav, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And in terms of the way this car has worn, which of course is always one of the things you worry about with a used car, I have to say it's really good. This car has only got 9,000 miles on it, but it feels like it's barely ever been sat in. It really has sort of cleaned up really nicely, so I don't think that if you're looking at a car with this low mileage, certainly you're going to worry about it. If you're looking at an older car, one of the previous generation Clios, which didn't have quite the same material quality as this, I think that might be a bigger concern. Even so, it's got a decent reputation for sort of fairly good build quality. But here, no concerns at all. Do you know what? It feels really quite nice in the Sandero. Dare I say it, in some respects, actually better than in that Clio. Because it's quite a basic spec Clio, you don't get things like this sort of really nice textile that you get in the Sandero, which I think really lifts the cabin. Similarly though, I have to say the seat material feels pretty cheap in the Sandero. Don't think anybody's really going to care given the price you're paying. You do get all the equipment you want and expect. You get basic aircon, so you don't get climate control, but it does the job, doesn't it? You also get your cruise control, you get your multifunction steering wheel, leather steering wheel. It's all very nice. Dials are very straightforward, also does the job. More to the point, I think one of the reasons that the Sandero might sway you over the Renault is the infotainment system. You do get this big 8-inch touchscreen to play with in the Sandero, which is actually easier to use than the Clios thanks to the bigger icons. Mind you, it misses out on nav, which is a shame, but most people won't mind since you do get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I really don't understand why you need this big clunky phone holder, since with Apple CarPlay this just seems like a bit of an unnecessary distraction. I would add that actually both the system in the Dacia and the Renault froze on us during our test drives, and neither really responds as quickly as would be ideal, even when they are functioning properly. When it comes to practicality, the Dacia is at a surprising advantage for rear passenger space. There's a bit more legroom, and overall this is actually one of the roomiest small cars, despite also being one of the cheapest. It also has a spacious boot with a big aperture. Entry-level Sanderos have a single-piece seat back that folds down all in one go.
Higher spec cars have this 60-40 seat split that we see here. But there are definitely a lot of signs of cost cutting here, with some shabby material finishes and a huge drop over the load lip.
Practicality in the Renault is good enough, I'd say, so there's definitely room back here for, you know, a lanky teen, average sized adult. I can sit behind myself in the driver's seat perfectly easily, but there's definitely a bit less legroom and even actually a little bit less headroom than you get in the Sandero. I'd also kind of think for a Clio, I reckon that you should get a central armrest in the back here as standard, but you don't. When it comes to boot space in the Clio, you're getting much the same really as you do in the Sandero. Certainly in terms of the physical space that you get, you're also getting many of the same problems. So you're getting quite a high load lip, which is not great, and a massive drop down to the boot floor. Not only that, but yes, the seats do fold in a sort of 60-40 split, but when you do, they leave a big step up, and you've got loads of exposed metal, some really scruffy material trim. It all feels just as cheap in the boot here of the Clio as it does in the Sandero. It's a pretty tidy drive as well, the Sandero. You've got a 1 litre 3-cylinder turbocharged engine in this, 89 brake horsepower, and it's a very new engine as well. In fact, it's the same engine that's in the Clio, if a little less powerful, but because the Sandero weighs a fraction less, or possibly because it gets a 6-speed gearbox instead of the Renault's 5-speed, which seems really odd. Can't explain that. Both will do 0 to 62 in just under 12 seconds, so they're quite much of a muchness for performance. It's a pretty decent little engine too, but you do kind of have to work it quite hard to get the best from it. Even though it's turbocharged, you feel like you have to rev it really quite hard. To put it in some context, I would say that the Fiesta's little 1 litre EcoBoost engine is a slightly better engine for delivering more torque lower down, being a bit more flexible. Still, it's a nice engine to use. The gear shift on that 6-speed box is it's a bit notchy, to be honest, but it's quite light and it's no chore to use. So yeah, it's all very nice to drive, quite a lot of body lean, ride comfort's decent, it's on slightly smaller wheels, the Sandero, than the Clio. Nice and cushy, and yeah, I don't think there's any issue with ride comfort, even around town and stuff. Gets a bit thumpy, but nothing that you're ever too bothered by.
One area that we can't avoid mentioning is the Dacia's safety standards. It received only 2 stars out of 5 in the most recent Euro NCAP crash tests, largely due to the fact that its autonomous emergency braking system can't sense pedestrians and bikes, and it also misses out on lane keep assist and traffic sign recognition. Ultimately, it is a way behind the most modern rivals.
Brakes are fine, but you know, not the last word in precision. You know, the throttle response is pretty spongy, so you seem to need to give it loads of throttle before you actually get much response. The clutch, I think, is the bigger problem. It's very light, but there's very little feel to it, so it's quite easy to over-rev the engine. It's one of those cars, it sort of seems to want to make you look a bit like a learner. For the price, honestly, you really can't argue with the sort of tidy, inoffensive drive that this car delivers.
Real-world economy in the Sandero is pretty good. We've seen 50 mpg fairly easily, with a decent mix of motorway and rural driving.
It probably won't come as a huge surprise that the Clio is quite similar to the Sandero to drive. Like I said, they are the same platform and even the same engine, even with this one getting a little bit more power at 99 brake horsepower. But there is actually a bit more of a difference than you might imagine, because the Clio's definitely got a bit more of a sophisticated feel to its handling. It's all in that steering. The Dacia's feels very light, whereas the Renault's got a bit more bite to it. It feels much better balanced in terms of its body control. It's just a bit more poised. I mean, I think in terms of a small car that also offers decent driver reward, I think you're looking at a Fiesta in this class as still the leader, but then this is pretty much right behind it. Just everything feels quite organic. To an extent, for that reason, actually, you feel quite happy to rev this little engine out in the Clio and really kind of use it. That 5-speed gearbox, I mean, the shift's not great, to be honest. It's still pretty clunky. It just feels a bit like the gate's quite wide. Those ratios aren't a problem, don't worry about that. In terms of motorway stuff, you're still doing around about 2,500 revs at 70 in this, and the engine's pretty quiet actually, so refinement's much of a muchness between these two on the motorway, but the clutch is definitely more precise than in the Sandero. In general, this just feels a bit more well resolved, I think, than the Sandero, and it's worth adding because obviously we've covered that safety aspect of the Sandero. The Clio does do a little better, so you can see here you get a colour display in the dials, which does make it look a bit more classy, I have to say. But not only that, that also gives you the traffic sign recognition and the lane keep assist info, which you won't get in the Sandero because it doesn't get those features.
Ride comfort in the Clio is a bit firmer than in the Sandero. Yes, it has that better body control, but it also gets slightly bigger wheels and you definitely feel the bumps a little more. However, it is just as efficient as the Sandero, and we have seen well over 48 mpg in a mixture of rural and motorway stuff.
This is a really difficult decision to make. They really are so similar, and they're offering very much the same thing for a similar price. But do you know what? I'm going to come down on the side of the Dacia, because I just think for what it offers as a new car for this price, it really is such fantastic value. But that isn't actually to say that the Clio's not recommendable, because I think depending on your circumstances, the used Clio could be the better bet, given the longer warranty that it gets as a new car, so you still get loads of warranty left when you buy it used, particularly if you go for nearly new like this. Given what you can get if you go for an older car, particularly that previous generation was still good, loads of kit, really good value as a used hatchback. I think it's a really good option if you are looking to save a bit of money but still get a really modern, really lovely small family car. But like I said, for the money it offers, for how nicely it drives, what it looks like, and even the equipment it offers, the Sandero is a hard one to beat. Don't forget to head to cargurus.co.uk for a whole host of fantastic used cars, all from top-rated dealers.